This was a different project than what I normally do. Never making a book from scratch before. Here I am folding the pages into signatures, now marking where I want the holes to line up for stitching the signatures together. Having that tab on the end of the paper helps make sure that every single signature is lined up perfectly with each hole. Using just a simple awl, gently push through and create the holes that the needle can pass through. If you're still with me, please like and subscribe, as I am constantly trying to improve skill as well as produce better quality videos showing different things that can be done with leather. Here I'm waxing the thread. This keeps it from being entangled and bunching up on itself. As I start to add new signatures to each stitch, in the end holes, I do what's called a kettle stitch to hold them together, basically a knot that keeps them together. As well as I pass through the middle, I wrap the threads around the previous threads so that the middle stays tight with itself as well. So this book was a special book, as a few years ago my sister presented my dad with a program that allowed him to write stories from his life. It prompted questions that he would then answer, and built the stories around them, or filled it in with the stories, and ultimately ended up with this book. Now the company does produce a paperback version that you can order, and we decided to see if we can make it a little bit nicer version to give to my sister, as she's the one that kind of started this whole project several years ago with my dad. So we printed it on really nice paper that we got from Highlanders Bookbinding, and printed it into a signature style so that the pages line up, and gave it a shot. I hope you stick through the end, as I was very pleased with how this book turned out. As I continue to keep stitching the last few pages together, this text block really starts to come together and be the book that it's going to be. And there it is, finished text block. And here you can see how the stitches kind of weave together, and the knots on the end that hold every signature together. So at this point, to help the spine swell from the threads and the folds of each signature kind of be reduced, I push it between my two boards and I stick it in the press for overnight. Here I'm cutting down the text block to get rid of the excess white spacing around the edge of the text, and also to square up the ends, as multiple pages folded together will leave almost like a V shape at the end of the pages, and this will allow it to have that flat edge that you look for when you're looking at a book. And I'm very carefully, not with a lot of pressure, dragging the knife one at a time, like one page at a time. Here I'm starting to kind of see what the rounding of the spine would look like. I ended up making it flat again, and off screen I glue up the spine. I put a little bit of paste on the spine and get it like PVA glue, and get it a little bit thicker. I like using PVA glue on the spine as it does have some flex to it still, and you can see a little bit of the gloss on the spine here. I apply some more PVA glue on the outside page as I'm to prepare it to get ready for the decorative page that will end up being behind the book's cover. And I use a scrap throwaway page, piece of parchment there, to keep the glue from splashing everywhere on the edges. Now I end up leaving this overnight and letting that dry, and then next day I start with the other side of the text block, gluing on the decorative page. And the parchment between the pages there is just to keep from the moisture of the PVA glue seeping all the way through each page and sticking it to the other page that I don't want it to be stuck to. And I use some old books that I've rebound, not with the greatest view, that just to add some pressure. Now here I take some cardstock paper and I am creating a spine, a little bit stronger spine that will also have the ability to open up and have a gap between it, so that the book can flex when opened easier without crimping and destroying the elegant look of the rounded leather spine of the cover. With just a little bit of PVA glue, this will be finished at this junction. And it lines up very nicely. Now here I'm backing the spine, and I'm using glancing blows. I'm not trying to hit directly on, but more glancing off of the spine. This creates almost like a shoulder on the pages that better seat the cardstock for the cover itself. Using a square, I'm able to make sure that My initial 2 cuts of getting straight edges on this are square to each other. So from that, I can do my measurements to have a cover that will be square on all 4 corners. And I draw a little square in the corner of the one that I squared up initially to always have a marker to know which edges to measure from. And with the test fit, I realized it was a little too tall for the text block, so I'm here cutting off another 1/8 of an inch. Now, the leather we decided to go with for this book is a kangaroo hide. It's a fairly thin leather, typically around 1 to 2 ounces. It's one that's commonly used in a lot of leather-bound books. And having never worked with it before and using different other leathers for rebinding books that I've played around with in the past, I really enjoyed how this leather worked and how easy it was to work with for this book project. Here I took a strip of cowhide veg tan leather, and I'm rounding the edges and preparing the whole strip for the decorative spine work. Now that I've got the cardstock for the spine cut down to the length I want, I am evenly marking out placements for those decorative ridges for the spine. And I'll have in the description a description of each little item that I've used for this bookbinding project. If you're interested in seeing what thread, what needle, where I got the cardstock, obviously the Hollander's PVA glue there is the glue I've been using. After I get these little strips of leather glued onto the cardstock spine, I leave it for a couple hours to just set up and make sure that it is good and solid on there. PVA is a little bit slower glue. If you like to think of like your glue that you used when you were in school, it takes a little bit to dry. Here I'm just beveling the ends of it to create the natural curve flow look in the spine on the finished cover itself. Now that I figured out where I want the spine of the book to end up, it's time to start gluing that cardstock spine on. Now the placement of it isn't that crucial. I just wanted to look for an area that was a nice piece on this leather after it had been stained, and then somewhat straight, as everything will be built off of the spine and be straight to the spine. Here I'm using a bone folder and just trying to accent the decorative ridges for this spine. I moistened it down as I was not getting the movement I wanted out of the leather. And even here at the end, I grab a second bone folder just to really drive in those sharp edges of it and get it a little bit more predominant. And after letting that dry overnight, I am able to start continuing work on the cover itself. So here I'm finding the absolute center for where the spine is, and then I make marks of where the covers the backing board will line up to be centered with that, and just using a couple spacers for the hinge section of the book itself. I am able to lay down the backer board for the cover exactly where they need to go. And having that straight edge allows me to also make sure that they are square and even to each other. Having never done this before, I was amazed at the talent of people that do this full time, making books and the craftsmanship that goes into a project like this. I was also pleasantly surprised and excited about how smooth the project was going for me as well. Now, having let this glue up overnight, I was very happy with how it's starting to come together. So here I'm just trying to get some straight edges all around the backing board and just making sure that the excess is taken away to finish out this cover. And a quick test fit to look at it. It's starting to look pretty good. Now I'm going to bevel the corners off, triangle the corners off. This allows for when I fold it over onto the backer board to create a nicer corner piece there. Now here's a section I messed up a little bit on. I wish I had not had cut the fold over sections there that I'm folding over as long as I did, as it ended up later on realizing that because I glued it over the cardstock spine there, I basically took away some of the flexibility of what that cardstock spine is supposed to do when the book is opened. But all in all, it wasn't that big of an issue, as the book still functioned perfectly well and looks really well, as you'll see here in the end of it. Now I decided to go ahead and, while the cover is gluing, to glue on the headbands for this book. Now headbands are awesome as they help protect the pages and the spine. especially when people tend to pull books out of a bookshelf with the spine of a book. We decided to go with something very simple for my sister, and I love the title that my dad selected there. So after gluing that on with heat transfer vinyl, I am sealing it with some Resolene. This is a sealant I use in a lot of my leather projects. And I do several coats of it, letting it dry a few minutes between each coat, where it's still tacky for the next coat to adhere to it, but trying to put it on there smoothly. And the more layers I put on, I'll end up using a paper towel to wipe away some excess so that there's not a streak or bubble look at the finished product. And here is the most nerve-wracking part of the whole project for me, was gluing that spine exactly in the middle and trying to get that roundness over it. But again, was pleased with how it turned out. So now that the spine is glued on, it's time to glue on the other side of the decorative pages. And again, I use just some scrap and to prevent the glue off from getting on other sections. And with a simple, just gently folding it over and pressing it down, I'm able to get it to line up nicely there onto the cover. Now let that sit overnight to really ensure the glue is dried and the text block cannot move around. But looking at the finished product, I'm very pleased with how it turned out. This was a nerve-wracking project, but very pleased with how it turned out. And thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.